Hello, everyone. Welcome to Plethora of Change, where we have conversations with inspiring women about how they're creating change in their communities. In this episode, we're welcoming a very special guest who's redefining the work as we know it and turning it into something more creative. Please welcome Mine Dedekoca.
Hi, amazing to be on the session, and I can't wait to have our conversation. Even when we were just talking about it, it made me really excited to meet all the audience who would be listening to us.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. It's an honor to have you in this podcast. And I'm very excited to start our conversation and introduce you properly to our audience. So, without any delay, without talking about what you do for work, how would you like our audience to know you?
I am all about balance, and I'm a combination of spirituality, well-being, happiness, and also technology and investment. So when I'm giving my keynotes, I like to visualize myself to be a left brain and a right brain job, and in the middle, like placing myself with my family. I'm a mother of two. I have two boys. I'm happily married to a very supportive husband. Without him, nothing would have happened because he is super supportive of me and what I do with the kids, with family. And I am a curious person. I'm a very social person. Most of my time is spent with my friends, family, doing networking, and I try to enjoy every moment of life. And that's how I would define myself.
Yeah, I think that's very beautiful, right? To have a support system through your family, but also to be someone that enjoys making social connections and living life to a fullest. And I can definitely see it also affecting your work as well. So, if we would have to reintroduce you, but obviously with the work you do this time, how would that look like?
That has been my biggest challenge over the last couple of years. And that was my New Year's resolution last year to describe what I do in 30 seconds. So now I have a perfect way to define it. I am running majorly two companies. I mean, there are like other companies that I'm co-founder or investor in, but majorly I'm running two companies. One is START-IST, where I help startups from ideation to getting ready for investment. I'm also the venture partner at the US-based VC, Trio VC. I'm an angel investor. I am running accelerator programs, doing collab between countries. And, so that's my startup world. And on the other side, I have another brand named Happy Work Studio. And with Happy Work Studio, we are helping individuals and companies to find their purpose, create well-being strategies, create happiness programs. We do have certification programs, happiness coaching, workplace happiness, workplace well-being, chief well-being officer. So we are running all those certificate programs and also helping companies work on their values, work on their purpose statements. We have a happy culture at work where people thrive in that culture.
So, two very important topics, right? Startups to foster entrepreneurship. And the second part is a bit more about also redefining work and maybe success as we define it and making sure employees are actually happy. I have two questions that about that are about that, if
Sure.
I may. So first, you mentioned you're an angel investor, and could you maybe clarify what that term means for our audience? What is a challenge that comes with being an angel investor?
So an angel investor is the investor who invests in the early stage of a startup. Usually you'll get the first one from your friends and family. We call it the FNF. Right after that, you have your angels. So the risk is higher, the investment is lower. So you put in a lower figure as an investment, but get in return a higher return if the business is successful at the end. So being an angel investor, I think, is really great because then you are just like helping them at their first phase, and you're also helping them grow the company, maybe even like introduce them to your network. Of course, the idea is important, like whether the idea is viable, whether it's scalable, whether there's a market fit. But I always invest in the people. So that the team capable enough to turn this around, or like, if this doesn't work, if this idea, if the first hypothesis doesn't work, do they have the capability, the agility to pivot at the right moment with the right speed? So the team really makes a difference. is, and what we always like to say that, it's not about the idea. Of course, the idea is important, but it's about the execution, how you execute it. And that depends on the team. If the team is right, if they are capable, then there is nothing that they cannot achieve. That's why usually we see the really the successful startup people to do another bit. Once they exit, they're serial entrepreneurs, so they keep setting up new companies if they're successful with one. Because like if you know how to do it, no matter what the idea is, no matter what the circumstances are, even if you fail with the first one, you will make it happen the next time.
Yeah, I think that's a refreshing take also in entrepreneurship, because often when I took entrepreneurship classes at university, I think a lot of my professors was stressing so much on the idea, which is like super important, but then there was less communication about what a team should be able to do. There was this conversation about the entrepreneurship mindset, but never like how do you work in a team? How do you create a team that can support each other and work? So hearing that that's super important is nice for me.
It's not that the idea is not important. Of course, the idea is important, but what you do with that idea is more important.
Yeah, because I mean, failure is a part of the process in,
Sure.
setting up successful businesses, I assume. So if an idea fails, can you change it? Are you flexible enough? Is definitely something I'll keep in mind as a starting entrepreneur, at least. You also use your experience then, right, to create your own companies. And one company that you've created, you're the chief happiness director.
Chief Happiness Officer of Happy Work Studio.
What does a chief happiness officer do? How is it different from the normal business structure that we have seen so far?
When anyone joins our company, I always tell them, okay, you choose your own title. You create your own title. So however you feel like doing in the company, like, just think about your role and the role that you want to have in this company, turned it into a title. And everyone gets to choose their own title, even not to choose, but to create the title they want in the company. So that's what I did. And I said, okay, I'm the chief happiness officer because, like, what I create is not only those happy cultures or the programs with happiness, but I embody that happiness in the company too. So, because that's what I am in my own life, I am what I am. And this, since I was a kid, I mean, the emotion, the dominant behavior that I had in my life is just happiness. I always act out of happiness. It doesn't mean that it's the fake positivism that I just like, go around and smile all the time and just like, laugh everything. No, but I'm usually in the acceptance phase. And the moments that I am just like not into that because you get triggered with life. Life happens. You have your challenges, you have your bills to pay. I mean, like, all those glitches in life. But even when you are going through those struggles, those hard times, how do you deal with that? What is the emotion that you're acting from? And that is usually like joy and happiness for me. So it's not about the things that I do in the company, but it's about like how I am, about my being, how I just like express myself is true happiness. So that's why I chose that title for myself at Happy Work Studio.
That's very inspiring, actually, because we're so used to like chief executive officer title, but what does that mean in daily life? We're not really sure where the focus of that person is, because it could be on profit, it could be on well-being, but with your case, it's very clear that you are focusing on, how do you react to things and how do you want to make people feel in coming.
Exactly. And it's all about the feeling. Like, we like to, when we are working with the companies, we like to remind them that people will not remember the things that you do or you didn't do, but it's all going to be about the feeling, how they felt about it, how they felt what you did to them, they felt about like what you didn't do for them. So if you create that feeling, the happy culture, the happy feeling in the company, that's what stay with them for their whole life.
You obviously also work with startups, so that's also new ideas, new markets, new audiences that people are trying to tap into. I assume these two things come with their own challenges. So I want to ask you if you could change one thing about either like the startup industry or the way people perceive work, what would you like to change?
Let's make it human focused, people focused. Because usually in the startup world is really hard. Everyone's trying to find an investment. The pace is so high that they just forget about themselves. They forget about their mental well-being. Their mental well-being is compromised, and they are sacrificing their mental well-being to have success, which is not okay. I mean, that has been so much normalized in the industry that everyone's even expecting you to just, do that. So it's kind of like the industry normal. And it's not okay. Because if you are experiencing burnout, if you are not taking good care of yourself and your team, and expect them to work long hours, sacrifice everything, their family time, their friends time, their own time, their me time, it's not sustainable. When we are talking about the business idea to be sustainable, but yet not having the mental well-being or the social connection being sustainable, then that's not a holistic success. It's only a partial success. So if I were to change, I would ask people to have this mandatory sustainable mental health, keep that as the KPI, because that's really important. At the end, I mean, that's not sustainable, people will just be burned out and they will not be performing better. So, that the outcome is not going to be a sustainable success at the end.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're available all the time for work, then you're definitely prioritizing that work, but then you might burn out in the end, right? That I think that's the obvious risk too. And that's not anything that an investor would want. They want you healthy and they
Exactly.
want your team to be also stable in that sense. I definitely see that. I have to ask, I think ever since I started investing more into this idea of gendered economics, maybe being also young and female, I've just realized maybe not everything is designed to fit me, or the society doesn't expect me to be who I am. And I want to ask you, as someone who has experience in the field, does gender ever play a role in the field that you're in? Or is there certain gender biases? Or is it just my personal luck that I've had encounters with these thoughts?
Okay, so investment and startup world is dominated by men. There's only a little portion even of investment that goes to the female founders. So when we are talking about that, there is a clear bias, there's a clear preference to invest in men rather than women. That's like, a big barrier. And that's what we are trying to overcome. That's what we are trying to change. And then even women make more investment to men. And they just like
Oh,
they have,
really?
yeah. This is like so subliminally working that, I mean, unconsciously they are just like, doing this. It's not like, consciously saying that, okay, I'm not going to invest in women. No, but when there's two proposals on the table, they usually prefer male over female. And when I say about my industry, I mean on the investment and startup technology world, like even the investors are usually men. So tech startups are usually men, investors are usually men. So there's a male dominance there. But the thing is, if you go to engineering schools, usually the engineering classes are like male dominated. So that has to change. And sometimes when the women want to start a new business, they don't choose the technology businesses because they are intimidated. They think that, okay, I cannot do this. I'm not capable enough, which is not true. So we need to change that mindset when those females are young. So it has to start when they are maybe even at primary school, when they're in kindergartens, changing those role models, changing those gender biases that are related to professions, that are related to areas of work. That's one thing. On the other side, with the Happy Work Studio, mostly I work with HRs, HR people, well-being consultants, well-being experts, and on that side is totally female dominant. How we can change this is having the same, like having encouragement, motivating those, and changing the mindset.
It's great that you mentioned that, because I was wondering, yeah, emotional burden always falls also on females, or being emotional is something we're labeled as. Do you see this, that women are expected to take care of well-being a lot more? And you've just said yes. Why is this? It's probably because of stereotypes that we've seen and societal
Exactly. And
expectations.
I mean, women are just expected to be the caretakers of their home. So they're the caretakers at home, at work. So they are always expected to give care. And even if they're not doing the actual work at home, let's say they're not cooking, but they still have to think about the ingredients. Or, like, even when they're ordering out, they're usually in charge of
Yeah.
those things, or even the things at school, like what the kids need at school, all those parent teacher meetings, they're usually expected from the mom. So the women around like 40 years of age, like 40, 50, they're like the sandwich. So they have to take care of their kids, they have to take care of their parents. So they're just like, stuck in between. It's the most, let me say, the fruitful time for work as well. So they have all those responsibilities they try to juggle, and that really hurts the mental well-being of women. So that's a big challenge that women are going through, especially during that age.
Yeah. And I think, especially like when you're left with the burden of care, like remote work opportunities, which I know you also work with, is something like a unique opportunity for women to still be involved with work along with these household responsibilities that is expected of them too. That flexibility, at least, I'm hoping could help as well. But what is your opinion on it? Does it help, or does it perpetrate the stereotypes even further?
There are two, let me say, two sides to it. For me, I like to see it in a positive way because it democratizes work, remote work, because, like, most women, when they get married, when they have children, they just stop working. So they leave their jobs, and it takes them really a lot more effort to go back to whatever they were doing before they get birth. So for that, the research shows that is making it easier for women to keep that balance between work and family, and even after they give birth, because they have the flexibility of managing their hours, managing the place where they work from, so they stay more in the workforce. So on that side is a positive thing. But some people say that because, like, being at home makes it harder for women to just, like, draw that thin line between work responsibilities and house responsibilities. If you know how to manage it in a way that is not turning you out, but you're keeping your lines, keeping your borders, it works to the positive. I mean, think about this. If you're supposed to be in an office from 9 to 5, and not allowed to go out, then you get to do those things after work hours. After 5, you get home, let's say at 6. From 6 to until the stores close, you have to get everything done. Or you have to do it during the weekend. So what happens to your weekends? Instead of just, like, having a rest, not doing anything, even maybe lying down, you try to get things done. So that doesn't leave you that extra time where you can relax, where you can just socialize, and you have to have everything happen through your off work hours. But
Yeah.
when you have the flexibility, when you're working remotely, when you're working in a flexible structure, then you can manage your own time. So you can squeeze those things in, and everything gets done naturally. So it's with your natural flow
Yeah.
during the day.
And I think that's what we want, right? More flexibility so everyone can tailor it to their needs while still creating productive work in the end.
Exactly. The flexibility, the freedom that makes people happy. So, and you are just like giving that flexibility, you are giving that freedom to them.
I ask this to every guest, but what does feminism mean to you?
I'm trying to be careful with that because, like, feminism was perceived wrong or maybe even executed wrong. And because, like, when sometimes when we say feminism, people think that it's just like anti-male. So we are just like, against men. We're just like, we are fiercely. And even the connotation, the feeling is fierce. But when we are talking about feminism, and the way we should be talking about feminism is just like, making sure that every gender has the same access to right of education, to right of speech. So having that, the having the same level of access, having the same level of rights. But when we try to equalize people, equality does not mean being fair. So fairness and equality are not the same thing. We need to make sure that, I mean, we are fair to both genders. equality, we're not equal. We're not created equal. Our bodies are not equal. If we try to make it equal, then we are not doing something positive to women. We're putting extra pressure on them. We're just like, saying, oh, you have to be this and this and this. That's not equality. So sometimes that is perceived wrong and even puts more pressure on women. I mean, think about this. You have to take care of the kids, you have to take care of home, but you have to also like, work like a man. So
Yeah.
no. That's why women are just like, burning themselves out. The way how it should be designed, even like, the work structure. I mean, the routines, like the men are linear. Their hormones are linear, their life is linear. For us, we're circular. Our body is working in a circle. So our life is in cycles. And the workplace needs to be designed like that. But the current structure, it was designed for men. So like, waking up at the same time every day, going to gym, burning yourself out, that's not a cycle. Because like when you are in your menstrual cycle, taking it, slow, maybe even staying at home, waking up late, just like, doing inner reflection, you have to have that space to do that. You shouldn't be just like, going to gym that morning and just like, wearing yourself out, like just menstruating. That's not the thing. So I'm so glad that we started talking about these because that was so normal. That was the normal. That was the norm that we didn't even realize that it was not the normal way for women. But now with the awareness, with everything, and even our men allies, I love to work with male allies. They're really amazing. They're like supporting and they are supporting the idea to change how things are being done in the workplace. So that's why when you ask me feminism is not only about the movement of women, but it's like the having even men being part of it. It's just like, redesigning everything to our creation, to how our system works, to our rhythms, to our rhythm of life.
So redesigning so that we, regardless of our genders, can have an equal opportunity to success based on our needs, our biological needs, and also duties beyond work. I think that's a really good definition. I'm really happy that you
Thank
mentioned it.
you.
So, with regards to the time, which is also precious, I'm going to ask you one last question, and that will be about the advice you would give to our listeners. What should they do? What should they not do?
The only thing that I can say is find your own rhythm. Don't listen to anyone. Just like listen to yourself. What do you enjoy doing the most in your life? What keeps you in the flow? What makes you happy? Because when you are just like in that flow, then life is going to help you too. It's going to give you the tailwind so that it's going to even push you further in life. So, what is it that feels easy for you, effortless for you? Find those things in life, test and try. Just find that
Mm.
effortless way and your own rhythm. I mean, read, experience. Experience is the most important thing in this line because other than that, you can do everything with the AI right now. You can just like delegate everything to AI. The only thing that AI cannot replicate is your own unique experience. So have as much experience as you can in your life, of your own life. Each day, our brain produces 60,000 thoughts. And out of those, 60,000, 90% is repetitive, is the same thing. Can you imagine? So you
Wow.
can just
Yeah.
change that. I mean, change, like live a different life every day. If you're just like taking the same road every day, the same route, just change it. If you're eating with your right hand, just like, try to do it with your left hand. If you That's the beauty of remote work too. Because like, when you're going to an office, you get to see same people every day do the same thing. But like, with remote work, I mean, be intentional, meet new people, give yourself that challenge that you need to just, meet a new person every day and see how your life evolves. It's like a super intense life then. And intense not in a negative way, but in a way that's like, fulfilling, like full of life. Just, live your life to its full potential.
Yeah, it's a good advice for me to also keep in mind, do something different every day so your line of thought also changes and sees different perspective and listen to yourself and your need in that sense.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this episode.
Thank you so much for hosting me. And I'm really active on LinkedIn. So if anyone's interested in asking questions or just like having a conversation, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Then I will tag your LinkedIn down below in the description so they can find you easier as well.
Okay, sounds great.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.